Welcome to my show. I'm a guest here. His name is Douglas Lynam. Mr. Dog, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Timmy. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Doug. Firstly, you are an author. You are also a speaker and a coach. Can you please, Doug, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Doug?
Yeah, if you'd like, I can give you a little backstory. I live here in the United States, and I grew up in a fairly affluent family, but money was really weaponized when I was a child. And when my parents separated and divorced when I was around 7, um, money became the tool that my parents used to get back at each other. And they often used their children as pawns in the middle. And so I developed a very unhealthy relationship to money. I thought money was kind of the root of all evil and money was the problem. Turns out it was just my parents. And so I had this really negative reaction. And in rebellion to my parents, um, I went off and I went to St. John's College here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is called the Great Book School, and had a great time here at that. But then I went and joined the Marine Corps. I went to officer candidate school with the Marines, and I graduated at the top of my class. But I then kind of had a spiritual awakening and realized that unresolved anger issues and high explosives were a very bad combination. And I probably didn't need to be going out and projecting my anger issues on people around the world with guns. And so I left the Marines and I joined a Benedictine monastery. I became a Benedictine monk for 20 years. And I thought I was going to escape the world of money and materialism forever. And thought that was a great way to really, really piss off my parents. And also was trying to find God and the meaning of life. And I think it succeeded on both of those fronts. Um, but in an ironic twist of fate, maybe about 3 years after I joined the monastery, our community went bankrupt because we all hated dealing with money. Turns out we took the vow of poverty just a little too seriously. And so someone had to figure that problem out. And as the youngest member of the monastic community, I was junior by maybe 20, 30 years. Uh, Kind of the grunt work fell into my shoulders. I took it on voluntarily and realized I couldn't do a worse job than had been done before. Even the bar was set really low. There are very low expectations. And even though I was financially illiterate, I went out into the world knowing nothing about money. Even though, my mom was a certified financial planner, my dad was the CEO of a company, and in my home, talking about money was more taboo than talking about sex. It was the thing that nobody wanted to ever address. And so I to pull the community out of bankruptcy. I just went to a local bookstore and I grabbed every book on finance I could find and started reading them cover to cover. And it took me a couple of years to sort that mess out, but eventually I did. That was around 1999, 2000. And then realized I had some talent at this stuff. And so, monastery guests would come to the community looking for help with their financial struggles. Or well, they would come looking for spiritual help. They would say, "Would you pray for me?" And I would be, "Of course." But
Mm,
making a budget might actually work a little bit better. That your real. I had this sort of realization that many, if not all, spiritual problems have they're either a direct cause of financial stress and struggles,
mm,
or there's a financial issue looking somewhere in the background, a sort of a secondary issue. If someone's just died, well, now you have this estate to probate, and if you don't know how to do that, and if your person didn't leave a will, like how do we sort this thing out? Or other people were going through bankruptcy or divorce or whatever,
mm,
and so and the law didn't have access or the ability to afford a lawyer or a financial planner or an accountant, and they realized, well, I can't do a worse job than what they're doing because they're not doing anything and they're not going to be able to find any other. So I just started. I would just take whatever problem was in front of me, and then just even if I didn't know how to solve it, I just start reading about it and learn and teach myself the skills to help that person through whatever they were struggling on. Uh, and so I really built up my skill set, and then over time, let's see, I was in a teaching order, so it was a Benedictine monastery. We were also a
mm.
teaching community, and then I was the head of the mathematics department at a fairly prestigious private school, and realized that we weren't teaching kids this stuff. That we didn't have that all of our students were going out in the world. They might know the quadratic formula, but they don't know how to budget. They don't know how to invest or save. And so I started teaching that as an elective course, which was very, very popular. And I always like to give the kids, real world hands on examples. And so for one day for a class project, I opened up our school retirement plan, which here in the US is called a 403B plan, and realized it was a complete train wreck. Everything inside of it was a disaster. Everything you don't want in retirement. The fees were high. The funds were performing very low. There's this thing called fiduciary duty and oversight, which wasn't happening. And so I went looking for a better company that could do a better job, and I couldn't find one. I realized this was an endemic problem across all schools and nonprofit, well, most private and public schools across the country in the United States.
Hmm.
So I decided to build my own investment advisory firm to try to solve this problem. So to give my own school what I thought would be a really great retirement plan. And so and it was crazy. It was an absolute insane idea, but I had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. So I started my
Yeah.
own investment advisory firm from inside a monastery and launched that around 2015. And at that point, I was getting really kind of tired of monastic life. It wasn't serving me well anymore, and for 1,000 reasons. We can go into that if you want. But eventually, I left and I became a full-time investment advisor. I took my little tiny company and I merged it with with a much bigger firm here in Santa Fe called Longview Asset Management, where I eventually became a partner and I was managing about $250 million in assets. And then I left that. I took a buyout about a year and a half ago to write this new book. I've got two books out. The first one's called From Monk to Money Manager, a former monk's financial guide to becoming a little bit wealthy and why that's okay. And my newest book that released last week is called Taming Your Money Monster, Nine Paths to Money Mastery with the Enneagram, which I'm really excited about. And so that was been the past year and a half. I've been putting all my time and effort into that because I couldn't be writing this book. I couldn't be working 60 hours a week in an office and working 60 hours a week in the book. And it was just
Yeah.
I had to make some hard choices. And so now I'm an
Yeah.
author, keynote speaker, and financial coach. And that kind of brings us up to present date.
Yeah. And just to clarify, we are in a world of capitalism. In this life that we find ourselves, there are a lot of things that, are imagined. And most of the time, if money is not really involved, the growth struggles. And that is what usually happens. And I'm very glad during those 19th time, there are a lot of, emotions that come during that time because, every single person wants to understand how it works. And I'm very glad that as a man, you are also trying your best to do it with kids to make them understand the value, how to use money, because we also need to understand how it works. We
Yeah.
also need to understand how we should use money as a whole. So we have to definitely understand that so that we can make use of it positively and make use of it to make the world a better place. And also, I would like to dive to your book, which you recently released, Taming Your Money Monster rather. Can you please, Doug, discuss more on the book? And do you also plan to write more books in the coming future, Doug?
I so I'm running on this personality system called the Enneagram, which some of your readers may know, most may not. And so it's a very complicated personality typology system that explains how your ego structure is formed and how your personality shapes, and then using that to understand how we all relate to money, often in unhealthy ways, what I call our money monsters. And definitely, I've only touched the surface with this book, and there's plenty more behind it.
Yes, I definitely hope we definitely have more better approach, which you brought to the table, making people understand how one can definitely understand how money definitely, and one can also definitely table money to make the society a better one. And that is why I would like to dive to the point why you feel like it is very important to personalize our financial approach. Why do you think it's also important for us to personalize our financial approach rather than following our generic money advice, Mr. Dog?
Well, Timmy, the reason is that, because generic advice doesn't really. So, what the Enneagram tells you, so there's Enne means nine in ancient Greek, gram means drawn. So, it's just nine things drawn together. And what we've now discovered through both childhood developmental psychology as well as neurobiology, there's only so many ways you can design an ego. It's just like a car. Like your car you drive is unique. You have a unique year, make, and model, and there's infinite ways you can design a car, but there's only so many ways you can design it to have it be roadworthy. And same thing with the human personality. There's some limitations that you can't go beyond, or it just doesn't function properly. And so these nine archetypes of personality explain really how you relate to everything. It's sort of the lens through which view the world. And you're not even really aware of it most of the time. It's sort of like the water you're always swimming in. There's a great story by David Foster Wallace that kind of sums it up pretty well. He told the story of there's these two fish, going up the river, swimming along, and an older fish comes by, and he says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" And the two fish swim along, and the one turns to the other and says, "What the hell is water?" Right? And because you've never been outside of water, you don't know what it is. And so the same thing with your personality structure. You woke up inside of it, and so you don't really understand what it's like to how you how different your perspective on life really is than everyone else around you. And so the Enneagram tells you what that perspective is. And then what I've tried to do in the book is explain how you particularly are going to potentially relate to money in very unhealthy ways. Um, and go into that. We can go into that in more depth. But knowing what your personality type is and being able to then customize your budgeting, your savings, your investing, your giving approach that allows you to capitalize on your personality strengths and maybe understand where your weaknesses are, that where you're likely to fall down and struggle, where other people may not. Some things that are could be hard for you are going to be easy for others, and vice versa. And so being able to personalize the approach really lets you know where those blind spots are that you have that you need to work on, because you can't see them if someone doesn't point them out to you. And it's just very hard to be. So the Enneagram is almost like another way of looking at it. It's like a mirror that holds you up and lets you look at the ego car you're driving in from all angles, because you're trapped inside. You're locked. The doors are locked. The windows are rolled up, and you have no idea what it's like outside of that perspective, nor how could you, unless someone outside can show you a mirror and hold it up and let you know what it really looks like, and how you might be struggling in ways that others may not.
Yes, our personality is something that we need to first deal with as a person. When we actually deal with it, then we'll definitely see the possibilities, how we can use money and how we can also make money really better for us and for every single person. And also, I would like to dive to the point of financial fears. One of the main
Mm.
reasons people really, doubt themselves when it's regarding money or how they want to talk about money is fears. They are looking, what if I do it this way and it doesn't work? And that is why I also like the area you said personality is very important. But in other ways, how do you think, you talk about confronting fears in the book too. So what do you think are some of the common money fears by type, and how do you think we can also face them, Mr. Dog?
Yeah, it's a very, very big question. That's about an hour lecture, and I'll try to. Let me just start by saying, okay, let me back it up a little bit. I'm not sure how to tackle that question succinctly. Give me just a heartbeat here to. Maybe what would be helpful is to just maybe go through the Enneagram just very, very quickly. Let me explain how it works. Let me explain what some of the types are. Maybe we'll just do one or two, and then we can go deeper into how that plays itself out. So the way to understand the Enneagram is like this. Okay, so when you were born, you had a physical umbilical cord that connected you to your mother, and that got cut with a sharp knife, and now you're physically separated. But you immediately develop this egoic codependence on your caregivers. So that allows them to do most of the driving for you in the early years of your life when you're an infant and a young child. But that psychological umbilical cord also has to be cut, because you need to separate that egoic codependency on your caregivers. And that psychological umbilical cord, and we know this now through the neuroscience, it can only be cut by negative emotions, because positive emotions will reinforce your connection to your caregivers. And there's only three the three sharpest emotional knives in the pain box of life are going to be anger, sadness, and fear. And we know this from the work of the affective neuroscientist by the name of Jaak Panksepp. And he found that in all mammals in the the lower mid limbic region of the brain, there's these there's actually seven emotional circuitries in there, but there's only three negative emotions. And so there's three negatives, there's three positive, there's kind of one in the middle that mediates them. But the three negative emotions again are anger, sadness, and fear. And we all get cut with all of them in our childhood, but one of those did most of the cutting, right? And so one of those we got hit with more than the other three. And so then you have to process that pain. And it can only be processed in one of three ways. You can either internalize that pain, which is kind of like giving yourself an emotional wedgie, right? You can externalize that pain, and it's kind of like having a food fight with the world, or you can have both. And so that's why we have nine archetypes of personality. So there's three core negative emotions and three ways to process that emotion, and three times three gives you nine. And so let's just talk about the sadness triad. So there's the anger triad, the sadness. We call these three triads, and then there's the fear triad. So let's just talk about the sadness one. We'll talk about my type because it's easy and it's fun to talk about. But I need to explain all three in that triad to understand one of them. So if you take that sadness, and that sadness is often can be thought of as shame or grief around your identity. And so, if you're in the system, we call them the type two, that we call them the helper, or I call them the ambulance of egos. They're the type who had that sadness and they externalize it. And what that means is they feel shame or sadness and grief about how they think the world perceives them. And that creates their greatest unconscious fear. And we all have, according to our type one, core unconscious fear that we're sort of driving our ego in our childhood. And for a type two, it's the fear of being unlovable. They fear how, again, they're ashamed about how people perceive them. They think they're not lovable, they're not likable, probably because love in their childhood family was very conditional. It was based on performance, a kind of performance of like, what are you doing for me? And so they run around trying to help people, but that help has a kind of has strings attached. What they really want is the best way for you to get to like me is for me to flatter you and tell you wonderful things about you and be of service and help to you, which on the surface is good. But what they're really looking for is for you to reciprocate and give that flattery back and give that help back to them. So it's sort of a pay to play kind of scheme they're doing. And so they get into all kinds of financial struggles, which we can get into. They can really end up bleeding out their time and treasure. So I call them the ambulance because they're so busy rescuing other people, they often have a hard time taking care of themselves. They have to bleed out their time and treasure in service to others. Um, and then we can jump over to type four, which is called the individualist. I call them the custom car. And they've taken that pain and they've internalized, excuse me, they have this internal sadness or shame about how they perceive themselves, which creates their greatest unconscious fear of not being unique, not having a unique identity. So they feel like they're lost, like they don't have a place in the world. So they're always trying to stand out and stand apart by being different. They sort of impulsively react. Whatever the convention is, they do the opposite. And so um, type four is the box for people who hate to be put into a box, right? It's sort of like, and so they're always trying to stand and be different. Now, in the middle between the two and the three, there's the two and the four is the type three. That's my type. I call them the achiever or the race car. And so my type, what we have is both that internalized sadness or shame about how we perceive ourselves, and that externalized shame or sadness about how we think people perceive us. And that creates our greatest fear of being fundamentally worthless. So we're always running around trying to achieve things like get the A plus, win the race, start the company, get the pat in the head from teacher, essentially. So trying to every type in the shame triad is in a different way is trying to get validation and connection. And threes get it by trying to get the accolades of the people around them. So they're often expert mask changers. They're wearing all these masks as a kind of performative approach to whatever you think the ideal person or yeah, whatever the ethos of the group or the people are from, we'll just change our mask constantly to be, to please the people around us. Okay, so that gives you three of the nine types. But then what I've done with the Enneagram is I've layered on top of it this new theory, what I call the attachment theory of money. Now, the attachment theory of money is based on the attachment theory of relationships, which some people may be familiar with. It's pretty popular. But what my spin on it says is that there's two unhealthy ways we can relate to money. We can either be anxiously attached to it, kind of like Ebenezer Scrooge, or we're too greedy, the Gordon Geckos of the world. We're too hyper focused on it because we're trying to use it in different ways. Or, and this was my type, You can be very avoidant of money. You can hate talking about it, hate dealing with it, tend to push it away, hate doing your bills, hate doing your budgeting. It's just and for whatever all the negative emotions that you have around money, we tend to push it away. And so when you put that on top of the Enneagram, there's what I call two money monsters for each type, one that's anxious about money and one that's avoidant. But most of us aren't clearly one type or the other when it comes to anxious or avoidant. There's what I call the four pillars of finance. So the four pillars of finance are going to be earning, saving, investing, and giving. So earning, saving, investing, and giving. Those are the four pillars of a robust, strong financial life. So you might be anxious in one of those pillars, but avoidant in another. So you might be an anxious earner, you make a lot, but then you're an avoidant saver because you spend everything that comes in on stuff. And so that leaves you broke. It doesn't matter how much you make. If you spend everything at the end of the day, you're still broke, right? Or you might be an anxious investor. You have a really robust portfolio, but you're an avoidant giver. You don't really ever take that wealth and use it as a tool for love and service to the world. So you avoid giving back to your community. And so for the type three, I have two money monsters for my type. I call them the barrier and the blinger. So the barrier is the money avoidant type three, who is like an ostrich. They stick their head in the sand and they just don't want to look at it, right? Might be busy achieving things in the world, but they don't ever want to look at their finances because all the shame and anxiety it produces in them. And so for threes, we often equate our net worth with our self worth. And so if you don't have a lot of money, that creates a lot of shame and anxiety. So money becomes a real source of stress and you tend to push it away. Or for the three, you can be what I call the blinger. And the blinger is the kind of person who wants all the cool, shiny objects and toys, not because they want the thing, but because they want to impress people with their status symbols. So they want the fancy watch, the fancy car, the big house, the nice clothes, right? But it's more to impress people with their status. So one expensive way to earn social status is to have a lot of status symbols. And so that's what the money anxious type three often gets trapped in. And so they end up spending all their money on stuff. So their financial life tends to look like a Hollywood set. It looks gorgeous on the outside, but it's just sort of paint and plywood on the inside. And then so if you know your money monsters for your type, that tells you where you need to look at in your financial life. Are you anxious or avoidant? And in which areas? Earning, saving, investing, and giving. And that can help you figure out, well, where's the block? Where's the emotional roadblock here that's causing problems in my financial life and preventing me from really becoming a money master.
Hmm. That's 100% shows that every single one of us sees money in different ways. And we have to definitely try our best to identify the ways we see money, then check through the right paths, as you said, to see the right. Maybe one is anxious about money or doesn't like money, or one is really, really attracted to money to use it to do a lot of things. One needs to know the kind of category he or she find himself and know how one can evaluate and see how one can definitely use it. As you said, we have to earn, we have to we have to earn, we have to make it, we have to invest, and we have to also give in. And we are it's just definitely inspiring that every single one of us have different ways we understand it. We also have different way we see it, and we have to definitely know how we see it and how we can definitely know how to try hunt with it. So I definitely appreciate you for those different type of ways people really see money as well. And also, lastly, I would also like to dive to one message you think one can definitely gain from your book that's Taming into Your Money Master. What do you think is the core message from your book that you hope people really not only budget better but to live better, Mr. Doc?
I think the most important thing is to understand what your greatest unconscious fear really is. And once you understand that, it then gives you um, well, here's the most important thing I've learned in writing this book is that every time I've caused pain for others, and every time someone else has caused pain for me that I love, it was because they were acting out or I was acting out an unhealthy aspect of my Enneagram type, of my personality type. And so when knowing what that what your type is and what that fear is and how it often drives your financial life and your personal life into a ditch, um, then you can learn to, well, let me put it this way. So we have this greatest unconscious fear, which is rooted in pain and rooted in trauma. And as a friend of mine, Richard Rohr, often says, if we don't transform our pain, we are destined to transmit it. And money, since money is the tool for most actions, it's hard to do anything in life without money. We couldn't be having this call without the computers and the electricity and the microphones that we're speaking on, right? So money is making this moment happen. You can't really go to the store and buy groceries. Everything we do takes money in some fundamental way, shape, or form. And so if we don't learn to face our deepest pain and face our deepest fears, we're often going to transmit that pain to others through our money actions if we're not conscious about them. And so I want to help move people from being, these money monsters, so we're not creating more trauma, which then gets passed on ad infinitum, right? We want the opposite. We want our lives to be lives of love and service and compassion. And it's and until you really learn how your personality structure works, it's very hard to master that process.
That is why I definitely love what you are doing. We have to
Mhm.
understand that pain, that fear is something we need to conquer. We do not need to try our best to pass it along with others and use the influence of money regarding to it. We have to definitely learn to show that kind of love, care, attention regarding no matter what we face, because definitely, pain always come. Triumph usually come. It is a normal thing in life, but we definitely need to work on ourselves, which comes to the point of personality, so that we can definitely use it to be a way to heal, and use that kind of love and care, and just kind of positivity outside, so that every single person who gets it also do it to others. So we have to definitely understand how that works, so that we can also use money in the positive and more respected way. And that will definitely make every single person happy. I think the world that we find ourselves now is, if one does it, then it starts to spread. This one also wants to do it, this one also wants to do it. And that is not how it works. We have to also check on our personality, check on ourselves, see how we can build on that, focus on our fears, focus on our pain. Every single person, one of us, have fears and
Yeah.
pains. We have to identify
Yes.
it, know how to work with it, and deal with it. And we can definitely use that one to share that kind of love, that kind of care. We'll face pain, but we shouldn't use it on others to definitely spread a lot of things. We need to use it to work on ourselves and become a better person, so we can be better for every single one of us to find. And we can also be better for the money that we are probably seeing in terms of the life we find ourselves. We definitely accept what has come in the world we had today. Every single thing we have to do comes in terms of money, and we have to try our best to learn and know how we can definitely use it in a positive way, and use it to make a good earning, to make sure that one is living well and every single person in the society are also being impacted by it. Lastly, Mr. Dog, there's a question I normally ask during the end of the show, Dog. From our ancestors, from our forefathers, there are a lot of things that do exist during our ancestral time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, what do you think that thing will be, Doc?
I think it would be a stronger sense of community, a stronger sense. And I'm not sure how things are in Nigeria these days, but in America, we're very, very fractious. We are having a very hard time learning to love our neighbor as ourselves, and we're busy insulting each other, and we're busy, pointing fingers at each other. And I would hope that we could have a stronger sense of oneness, particularly in the United States. We used to have a sense of what it meant to be an American, even though there were some obviously horrible things about that, and American imperialism, and all those things. But nonetheless, we had at least a sense of commonality, a common sense of community, and that we had a common shared identity. And I think that now it's time to broaden that beyond just America, but could we hopefully have a greater sense of global community, in a sense that seeing our interconnectedness to all things, and being able to live in a wider support network, rather than being so, particularly after the pandemic here, people have just had a very hard time connecting in a deep and meaningful way, and bring back the community that we used to have.
Yes, I totally agree. Community is something that is really fading currently now. Even in my place too, it's really more of isolated, but we usually try our best to show ourselves that kind of love and care. It is not easy. Technology and those pandemic that really happened, that lockdown that happened really caused a lot of up and down. But we definitely need to say, as you said earlier, Mr. Dog, global community. We have a very powerful tool, and if we use it well, we make a very vibrant community that will help every single one of us. Because if we show that kindness and love we give on another, we will definitely grow and will definitely make the world a better place. But if one does terrible to one and that other person feels bad, that person might not be a person who usually learn how to heal. I might do it for another person, and it spreads, and the world now
Yeah.
comes to a point whereby it's isolated. We do not want
Yeah.
that. We want love. We want care. We want attention. We want understanding. Despite the culture, we have a very, very different culture background, but we have to definitely learn how we could respect ourselves and also be a person who can definitely be more understanding regarding the background we find ourselves. I think the globalism that we have and the technology we have is something we should use well. If we use it well, it's gonna really, really help every single one of us. And if we use it otherwise, it's going to do otherwise. We have the power, we have the tools, we need to use it well. And I also want to thank you for this understanding, because the way people understand money now, it's just overwhelming. I have to be honest. We have to understand money in the right way. Money is great, but we have to definitely know that there are some things more valuable than it. We definitely need it in our way, but we have to know the value that we definitely have. The thing is more important, the value is more important. Then we can use money to support it to definitely make it grow. I also want to use this opportunity, Doc, to honestly thank you for the time and the opportunity on speaking on this important topic. Thank you so much, Mr. Doc.
Thank you, Timmy. Thank you for your time and thank you for your great podcast. And best of luck to you. And I wish you much success moving forward.
All right. Have a wonderful day, Doc. Bye bye.
Thank you, Timmy. Be well. Take care.